Hey guys, in this video I'm doing a good old-fashioned comparison. Haven't done one of these in a while, so I'm excited to share these two lenses with you guys. I've done reviews on them independently, so if you want a review on either one of these lenses, then definitely check out those videos. In this video, I wanted to show you guys side by side the performance difference between the Tamron 11-20 f2.8 and the Samyang 12mm f2. Both of these lenses are new-ish releases. They both came out a couple of months ago, and although the price difference is pretty large, I'd say most people are probably going to be cross-shopping these lenses if you are looking for an ultra-wide angle lens. So let's start by taking a closer look at both of these lenses side by side, and then we'll jump into some samples. So these two new lenses look very good side by side. They are pretty different, however. What's not different is that both of them are mostly plastic composite construction. Both of them have metal mounts, both have small rubber gaskets around the mounts for weather sealing. That's really where the similarities end, because the Samyang is a small fixed 12mm lens. You can't zoom in or out with it. The Tamron is a zoom ultra wide, so it moves from 11mm all the way into 20mm. So it's a more versatile lens. If you are planning on using one of these two lenses for vlogging, I'd say the Tamron is definitely much more usable. Both lenses have autofocusing systems. I'd say that they are relatively close. However, the Tamron is a lot more native feeling. The Samyang autofocus, it's silent, it's quick, it's relatively accurate, but it's just a few steps below what you get from the Tamron. The Tamron is just as good as a Sony lens. However, either one of these lenses would be adequate for video work because the autofocus systems on both lenses are silent, linear focus motors, etc., etc. So there are the lenses side by side. Now let's take a look at how these two performed. I took a couple of sample photos, maybe 10 or so, with my A60-100. Let's check them out. All right, this is the first photo. I'm going to keep the Tamron images on the left and the Samyang images on the right. This one is done at f2.8, and I tried to match as best I could 12mm on both lenses. So wow, immediately, unexpectedly, at f2.8 you can see that the Tamron is sharper in the center. Let's move out. More detail in this building here. The colors are a little bit more vibrant and contrasty with the Samyang though, but definitely poorer performance here in the corners, and this side is more of the same. Let me zoom in a 2:1 just to show you guys. So take a look at this power structure. You can kind of see how detailed that is with the Tamron, and it's lacking a bit of detail with the Samyang. So this next shot is in this same location, just slightly different aperture. By slightly I mean f8, so it's very different. So now let's see what stopping down to f8 does, and this is 2:1, and you can see that the Samyang is nice and sharp here. It's about the same, I would say, between the two of them. Can't really tell a difference. As I zoom into this building, same thing. Again, this is 2:1. Let me go back to 1:1. And you can see at f8, the Samyang is keeping up with the Tamron. The next image here is of a parking garage, this time done at f5 on both. And let's see if we can see much of a difference here. This is again 2:1. Let's go back to 1:1. And you'll see here that both lenses are doing exceptionally well. I tried to focus them in a similar fashion. That's really one of the things, the only minor complaint that I have about the Samyang in comparison to the Tamron is the focus system just feels a little bit less new, less fancy, feels a little bit more inferior. But you can see here the performance is pretty good. There's a little bit more chromatic aberration I've noticed in a couple of shots with the Samyang. You see that purple fringing even right here. You don't see as much of it, although it is still there even with the Tamron. But at f5, both of these shots are very usable, and I'd say the colors look even a little bit better with the Samyang. This next shot is done at a lake here. This is stopped down to f8 again, so we should see pretty similar performance, and indeed we do. take a look at the greens, just how punchy they are on that Samyang. I noticed that most of the images look just a touch brighter with the Samyang versus the Tamron, but otherwise, from a sharpness standpoint and clarity standpoint, I'd say that both of these are equal performers when you stop them down. Now, if you have a subject in your frame, such as my wife here, and you are shooting at wide open, let's say f2.8 versus f2, this is what you can expect as far as sharpness in the middle. And you'll see that the Samyang actually is decently sharp wide open at f2. Surprisingly, the Tamron, I'd say, maybe is just a hair or so sharper, but it is very close, and that's a pretty good performance, at least in the center of the frame at f2 from the Samyang. You get a little bit more bokeh as a result of f2 versus f2.8. You'll see that here. But if you are photographing people with an ultra-wide, the Samyang is not bad wide open. Here's another shot of my wife, this time at f4, and let's punch in and see both lenses looking really nice and sharp. If I had to pick a winner, I'd say the Tamron is just a touch sharper here as well, but pretty good performance from the Samyang, I'm not going to lie, at least in the center. The rest of the image you're not really going to compare just because it's not, I wasn't focusing here, but if you do take a look at it, you'll see that at f4 on both with these same exact settings, the Tamron corner to corner is significantly sharper. But again, that's not to detract from this image. The focal point is the center, and both lenses performed well in the center. Here's a shot of a tree at f6.3. I wanted to see if maybe we could see some chromatic aberration. Maybe it wasn't bright enough in the background, but you do see a little bit more of it again with the Samyang, just slightly. You'll see it on the very extreme ends. The Tamron does a really good job of hiding chromatic aberrations. And as far as detail is concerned, at f6.3, it's still a slight win to the Tamron. You'll notice just the small little leaves on the very end. You can kind of see those. Let's give you a 2-to-1. So you can see that little detail there, and it doesn't seem to be as detailed. Again, more chromatic aberration here. But from a distance, both shots look good. And again, the colors, I'll say it again and again, the colors look very nice on the Samyang. This next shot, I wanted to see what happens with bokeh. So this is f2.8 versus f2. This is aperture priority on a camera. And you'll see I focused on the very corner of this bench. And let's see, I'll move to this tree in the background. And so what's interesting here is if you go to 1-to-1, it looks to me like the bokeh on the Samyang is a little bit smoother. It's larger because, again, it's f2 versus f2.8. However, you do get a little bit of onion ringing and green fringing around the bokeh balls. You don't get that with the Tamron, so in theory, the Tamron has the better bokeh. However, you can give it to either one of these. I mean, if you look at it from a distance, neither lens is really producing distracting bokeh. And because you see larger bokeh balls with the Samyang, that looks better, in my opinion. This next shot is at f2.8. I introduced some foreground bokeh with both, and you'll see that both lenses did pretty well here. Very little difference between the two of them there. And then when I punch in and take a look at the detail, I mean, look at that. That is very, very close. Here's 2-to-1. And good luck picking a winner between these two. Honestly, it looks like the Samyang did a little bit better, which is surprising here at f2.8. Just look at the skin detail. The eyes are nice and focused. It just looks like the Tamron might have misfocused, or maybe Janessa moved ever so slightly in between me pressing the shutter. But both images are rock solid, excellent. And then if you look out in the background, it's a very similar thing. As far as skin tones are concerned, I'd say, again, the Samyang does a very good job. Let's move on to the last image here, and that is just a whole bunch of rocks and gravel. And I tried to shoot this as flat to the ground as possible. And this is f8. So up close f8 flat. We shouldn't see much of a difference here based on the first couple of f8 images. You'll notice with the Tamron there appears to be some vignetting. Look at how much brighter the Samyang image is. However, with the Samyang there's a little bit more distortion that I noticed, some barrel distortion. But look at how much darker that image is from the Tamron. So taking a look at the extreme corners, nothing to report here. Both lenses very nice and sharp. The other corner very nice and sharp. Besides the darker rendering that you get with the Tamron, there's really nothing to compare here, nothing to differentiate both of these lenses when you stop them down. That is a pretty definitive result between these two lenses. Obviously, the price difference is something that we should mention. It's a pretty significant one. The Samyang is basically half the price of the Tamron. You're looking at around $400 versus around $800. So you're paying a lot more for the slightly improved performance. Ultimately, the Tamron is the better choice if you are a professional or if you want to have the gear of a professional. However, you can't argue the value proposition that the Samyang provides. Even though it is an older optic design, I wish they would have updated the optics instead of just slapping on an autofocus motor. I think both of these lenses are good options if you are in the market and you're like, I don't know, I'm not going to go on a computer and zoom in and take a look at pixels, then just stick with the Samyang. If you know that you're taking real estate photography and you need sharpness in the corners and you need the best autofocus performance, go with the Tamron. As always, I'll have links down in the description below for both of these lenses, so if you are interested in reading more about them or buying them, please check those out. Thank you so much for all of your comments, all of your likes, and your support. Stay tuned for more videos, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.